This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/audio.
I am the daughter of a murdered woman repeats over and over each and every time I get on TikTok, a social media platform that used to be known for dancing videos and young influencers' dramatics, but now has people utilizing its grand reach to spread awareness in ways they otherwise may not have had the ability. Nikki Wasalishin is one of those people, and she is the one who starts nearly every video with, "I am the daughter of a murdered woman," as she full-heartedly seeks justice in the 30-year-old unsolved case of her mother's murder. Today on Like Mother Like Murder, we will be talking about Stephanie Wasalishin. Welcome to Like Mother Like Murder. I am Rachel.
And I'm Heather.
We bring you the good,
The badass.
and the crime.
This is Like Mother, Like Murder.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Like Mother Like Murder, your favorite true crime momcast. I am Rachel.
And I am Heather, and we're the hosts here on Like Mother Like Murder. We bring you mom-related crime content weekly, from missing moms to murdered moms to moms who murder, survivors, and more.
To everyone who is returning, welcome back. We are always happy to have you guys here. And anyone who is new here, if this is your first time or, you're checking us out for the second time, we are so excited that you're here. We love having new listeners.
Welcome, welcome.
You guys, it's officially the new year.
Yes, it is.
New year. Happy New Year's, everyone. 2025.
Happy New Year to ya.
Happy New Year to everybody. I think we all needed it. Can I say that out loud? I think we all needed 2025.
I hope this is going to be a year that we're all very happy with, because...
Yeah, December showed me my way out. December showed me I was done with 2024, but then as I looked back, I was like, oh no, I was done with the entire year. So
you were like, I was done in January of 2024, actually.
Yes. So Happy New Year's, you guys. Hopefully you are as excited for 2025 as we are, because we needed it. We all needed it. Anyone I talked to, I'm not even joking, every single person I have talked to has been like, we are ready. Yeah. We are ready. Yeah. You got anything new going on over there? Any updates you need to share with everybody before we begin? No. She's like, look, I know we just got in 2025, but no, keep going.
Yeah. So it's just like, I feel like I'm still a little bit in 2024. I think it's because I haven't been able to do a deep clean on my house since like Christmas. And I think I need to do that, and I need to like go to the gym, and I need to just get back into my routine.
Yes.
I know, it's the new year's about new beginnings and new whatever, but I kind of need my old routine so that I can get back into the swing of things, I guess.
Routines are beautiful.
Yeah.
I feel like the older you get, and maybe there's teenagers or young adults that are this way. I sure wasn't this way, but the older I got, the more routine was everything to me. And I was like, I need structure in my life.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
I need it.
Good. Get that done. Go to the gym. Maybe this year you'll do a pull-up. So before we move on, did you make any resolutions or a word for yourself? If not, it's fine, because I don't remember
all
shit.
I've done is cross out the 2024 and input 2025. Resolutions 2024, resolutions 2025, all the same list. Definitely all the same list.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I didn't think about it, don't want to think about it, and I'm just going to live every day just one day at a time.
One day at a time in 2025.
And that is it, you guys. All right, so before we get into the episode, we want to shout out one of our podcasting friends. Her name is Kadra. Over at Kadra Perplexity, a mystery podcast. And if you guys, we have shouted her out before.
Yes,
we've also been on an episode with her, and it was awesome. It was awesome. If you guys did not check that out, you need to go and do that right away. But one of the reasons we're shouting her out right now is we are going to have her on Like Mother, Like Murder in some of the upcoming episodes. So you guys stay tuned for that. But right here, right now, I'm going to play her trailer for you guys, and then go wherever you guys get your podcast and subscribe, follow on social media.
YouTube.
Perplexity, a mystery podcast. Yes, YouTube. She is big on YouTube. She does the damn thing.
Yeah.
I strive to be Kadra vibes in 2025. That's there's my goal. You made it. Kadra, I'm coming for you. No, just kidding. All right, here she is.
Love a good mystery that leaves you wanting more? Check out my podcast. Hi, I'm Kadra, the host of Perplexity, a mystery podcast. I tell tales every single week that have left me perplexed. You'll hear true crime cases, mysterious disappearances, learn about cults, hear baffling sightings of cryptids, chilling paranormal encounters, and even dark and weird history. I release new episodes every Wednesday, and you can listen anywhere podcasts are available. I'm also on Patreon, and you can even watch me on YouTube. Perplexity, a mystery podcast. Stories that will leave you perplexed.
In the early morning hours of July 9th, 1993, a phone call was placed to 911. In this phone call, the person behind the phone explains that he needs help. His wife has been shot. Then proceeds to say he doesn't know if he shot her or if she shot herself. The woman whose life was taken that early morning was Stephanie Wasalishin, and her death is still unsolved today. It's such a tragic story that ends with more questions than it begins with. This family changed completely. Heather's face. Should I ask you a question before I continue?
Keep going, because
you guys, Heather's face.
This one's so hard because it's sounding familiar to me. Not because of the name, although Wasilishin should be a name that completely. I mean, that's not a common name, but
that 911 call.
Yes. As
soon as I said that, your face had changed. Well, I feel like, and I wanted to address it right then and there too, because I feel like there's probably a lot of people listening that when I read that also had a very similar reaction. And trust me, that is kind of where we're going to be at throughout this whole conversation today. Yeah. So, like I said, this family changed completely. There were two daughters. They were left without a mother, and they were left to question and not know what happened when it came to their mother's death. But here's the thing. Maybe there were questions left that needed to be answered, but at the same time, a 3-year-old in the house, one of the daughters, as detectives stood in their home looking at their murdered mom, sputtered the words, "Poppy killed mommy, Poppy killed mommy," over and over. So maybe some of those questions that have been circled around over and over were possibly answered back on July 9th, 1993, when this first took place. So let's go back in time. Stephanie Marie Wasalishin was born June 1st, 1961, in Chicago, Illinois. Stephanie was born a fraternal twin with her twin brother, Stephen, to their parents, Harry and Bernice. Stephanie was a part of a big family. Her parents, she was with her parents, and then she had 4 older siblings.
Damn.
And then she was a twin. Sadly, her twin brother Stephen passed away before he was 1 year old. Stephen had gotten sick, and he actually died from having the measles. And it's actually even more sad. Like, it's tragic when you know the situation, because Stephanie tried to get her mother, Bernice, tried to get Stephen to the hospital to be taken care of. And even though ambulances said that they were going to be on their way, like the dispatcher said the ambulance were on their way, they never arrived. So they ended up calling the cops and calling the police as well. And they came to the residence but refused to give them a ride and told them that they needed to call a cab. So I know that is just... It's disgusting when you hear that, knowing what happened next. It was so, so sad for this family. Stephanie Marie Wasalishin was born June 1st, 1961 in Chicago, Illinois. Stephanie was born a fraternal twin with her twin brother, Stephen, to their parents, Harry and Bernice. Stephanie was a part of a big family. It was her parents. She had 4 older siblings, and then her twin. But sadly, her twin brother Stephen passed away before he was even 1 year old. Stephen had gotten sick and actually died from having measles. And it's so tragic when you know the whole situation, because Bernice, the mother, she tried to get Stephen to the hospital to be taken care of. And they called 911. The ambulance said that they were on their way, and they never arrived. So then they call the police as well, called again, and the police come out. The police show up to the house and tell them they're not giving them a ride. They refused to give them a ride, and then told them that they needed to call a cab. So
that seems illegal.
How do you turn someone away like that?
That doesn't seem
ridiculous. And in the conversation too, like when I was reading about this, they said like call a cab and don't tell them that he has the measles. So I don't know if in their way that it was, they didn't want to get I don't know. It makes no sense. It's ridiculous. So
thank God for the measles vaccine. People,
well, it was a thing back then, and the majority, people
Yep.
had it. So it's not like it wasn't something that people had.
Yeah.
But not long after that horrific event, a younger sister was also born into the family. Stephanie was someone who had a big heart, and she was known growing up to be very passionate and driven. As an early adult, Stephanie was in a relationship with a man named Craig, and the two of them welcomed a daughter, Nikki, into the world. Stephanie was only 19 years old, and although she seemed ready and happy to be a mother, Craig, on the other hand, at the time, he didn't seem as ready. He seemed like maybe he was holding on to his youth for as long as he could. So things did not work out there, and Stephanie ended up meeting a man, kind of running off with him, and his name was Russell Peterson. Instantly, they became close. For many reasons, but ultimately because he seemed to be the family man that Stephanie was looking for. So she had already had Nikki, and he kind of fit right in right there with her. And a few years later, they welcomed another baby girl, Christina, into the family. Their early years, they moved around a bit as they worked in different locations, raising their family and learning their skills. Russell was a chef, and he had helped Stephanie to learn the ropes when it came to the knowledge and skills in the bakery department. So they were both in the restaurant industry, and things were good for years. Now I'm going to take you to the time of the crime. Stephanie, Russell, and the two girls were living on Coffee Pot Drive in Sedona, Arizona. They were both working at the same restaurant together, Russell as a chef and Stephanie as a pastry chef. Stephanie was home with the girls the evening of July 8th, 1993. Russell came home late that evening. It was after 11 p.m. So he came home, and Russell says that after he got home, he showered. Then him and Stephanie were having a bottle of wine. And let me say here, before I continue, Stephanie lost her life. So we only have one side of the story. Russell's side, right? We only have information that came from other people after the fact. We don't have Stephanie's side. And that plays a huge factor in this unsolved case over the years. But I want to add that here because as I'm talking and as I'm telling you guys what happened, it's from interviews, conversations, interrogations with Russell Peterson.
Right.
Not, that's all we have. So back to that night. They were having wine, and he says that things were fine in the beginning, but that it shifted because Stephanie was mad about an upcoming trip that Russell had planned. So Russell had been accepted into a culinary program in New York. And this program, he would have to be spending or taking money that they had both saved for this trip. And so that was hard for Stephanie. And one of the things was Stephanie, she had plans to be taking the girls to Disneyland on like a family vacation coming up. And this was the money that he was going to have to dip into and take for this culinary school that he was going to be attending. So on this night that he got home, because he was going to be leaving the next week, on this night, Russell says that they get into the argument about that, amongst other things. And one of those other things was that Stephanie had also had a very long phone call with Nikki's dad, Craig. Which we'll get more into that conversation after we talk about what happened next. So Russell says that after the conversation escalated, that Stephanie got up, walked away, just out of nowhere. Okay, so when he explains this thing, she just stood up, walked out on the conversation, walked back to the bedroom, and then she returned with a gun. This gun was a Ruger Redhawk .44 Magnum revolver. From his recount, he claims that Stephanie pointed the gun at him, shot the gun, missing him, going into the wall, and then she turned, walked away, and went straight back into the bedroom. He ended up standing up, following her, kind of saying, like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? Where she says, I'm going to kill you. And that she was going to shoot him again. So he ends up getting close enough that a struggle ensued and that the gun fired and Stephanie dropped. Now, I opened this episode talking about a 911 call, and that's what I'm going to play for you now. This is the 911 call that took place in the early morning hours on July 9th, 1993, from Russell Peterson to the Sedona Police Department at 1:40 a.m.
911, what's your emergency? I need help. What can I help you? There has been a very bad accident. Me and my wife, we were in an argument, and she's hurt. She's hurt very bad. I need help. Okay, what's wrong with her? She's been shot. She was shot? Yes. Who shot her? We were... I don't know. You don't know who shot her? She might have shot herself.
Okay. So what is standing out to me is 911 caller.
All of it? The whole thing?
Well, yes. But the 911 dispatcher is like, she's been shot? Because it went from what, like, the way he's describing it, there's been a very bad accident. You know, she's thinking, the 911 dispatcher's thinking car crash because he's saying accident.
Yeah.
No. She's been shot. She's been shot. And then the very next question, who shot her?
Right.
The silence?
The silence and the clearing
loud.
his throat, right? Like,
Yeah,
it speaks
that's
volumes.
loud.
Right. There's so much in that phone call. And how you said it, the silence is loud. So law enforcement, they show up and they start doing their thing, which I'll get into all of the inconsistencies and problems. But so the Sedona Police Department, it was small and they were newer. They had just established a police force a couple years prior. So we see this come up way too often, right? With smaller agencies or departments that don't typically deal with things or haven't dealt with, whether it's murder or anything like this, right? Maybe things are just missed or things are done wrong. And maybe it's not with ill intent. Maybe they just don't know.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, call someone in that knows, right? But either way, that night they talk with Russell. They assess the scene. And at first, right then and there, they say it's a homicide. They take and talk with the girls. They put them in the cop car. And then they put Russell. Huh?
How old are the girls at this point?
Sorry. So the youngest is 3.
3
and Nikki is
9.
10.
Oh, 10. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And I'll get to them because, so Christina's a part of it. The youngest one, she was a part of it. She saw certain things. And Nikki was asleep. And it was a small house. It was a 2-bedroom house. And the garage was kind of converted for Nikki. So she was on the opposite side. So she didn't wake up for this. She woke up to, like, police in her face saying, wake up. So, but listen to this, okay? They take the girls, they put them in the cop car, and then they put Russell in the same cop car with them to go down to the station. So, first of all, even if you don't know the whole situation, like, how could you do that?
That is 100% against protocol because, first of all, you immediately are saying this is a homicide.
Right.
So you immediately separate out the freaking criminal.
Right.
Like, that makes no sense. Like, no sense at all. What the fuck?
I know. It blew my mind, and that's one of the things that Nikki talks about all the time is, like, how in the world was he put into the cop car with us? Like, this makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to be telling you guys a lot right now. And so I wanted to give you that, Heather, and everyone listening, some of the information, some background so that you can go into this, because now I'm going to tell you a lot. And remember, it's over the span of 30 years.
Okay.
But it's all about this night and the things surrounding it. So we're going to get into inconsistencies, interrogations, relationships, and so much more. So first, inconsistencies. Russell changes his recollection of that night each time that he talks to any law enforcement at all. Something always changes. He says that she comes out with a gun, saying that she was going to shoot him, fires the first shot. He follows after her. They get into a scuffle of some sort. The gun's fired, Stephanie dropped, and he didn't know who fired the gun, right? In the call, right? He says that. Then another time, he states that he could see her drop, that he was back more, and that he watched her shoot herself and drop from a distance. And then the interrogators, right, they bring this up in the conversation. He says that he wants to point out these inconsistencies. So something I may not have mentioned earlier is that Nikki shared everything with us. I don't think I said this at the beginning, but she emailed the case file that she had put together. So I want to read a couple things to you guys from one of the interviews with Russell. September 3rd of 1993, this happened. So the crime took place on July 9th, and now this is September 3rd, so months after the fact. Walter Spokes is the person interviewing Russell. And in this interview, he says, so Spokes says, okay, obviously there's been a bunch of, or a number of discrepancies in how you've told the story a couple times. Your own admission at one point, you told us, then Russell begins to say something, but Walter kind of cuts him back off and continues. And he says that you struggle, and then there's another point you said that you didn't. And then that conversation continues, right? So he's pointing out that in certain conversations, he's talking about this scuffle, this struggle that they had between the two. Yet in other conversations, you're saying that you saw from a distance that she dropped and shot herself.
I don't think there was a struggle. The struggle was my own struggle. I wanted to grab her. I wanted to stop. I should have stopped the madness. Why did all this happen? You never gave me the chance. What happened? I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. I may know. It'll come to me soon. I don't think I ever put my hands on her.
July 30th, so let's go back in time again, 1993, Wendy, this is Stephanie's sister. This was her younger sister that was born after she lost her brother. They were very, very close. They were close forever, and people would say that there was times that they would say they were twins because of the fact that, like, She was only born 9 months after the fact, too. So she was very, very young and very close in age. And they just had a really, really great bond. Stephanie's sister, who was working hard with investigators and trying to find answers and justice for her sister, calls the police with an update and says that she spoke with Russell on the phone on the 26th and said that after the first shot took place at him, he then followed her into the room, and when he went into the bedroom, that she was already dead on the bed. Again, completely different from the initial recount. In another interview, they're talking to him again about the struggle and ask him, what was your plan? You know, when it came to you following her into the room, what was your plan? What were you going to do? And he says he doesn't know. He can't remember. But in this, he says, and I'll read it from the transcript, the question was, what were you trying to do? What were you trying to, and then it kind of goes inaudible, take it from her hand? What were you trying to do? And Russell says, I was trying to get it out of her hand. Next question was, do you both have hands, or do you have both hands on her hands? Or do you have one on each of her wrists? How were you? Like, you know, he's asking to explain that. His response, I can't honestly tell you that. I can think back and say I know exactly how we were, but I don't know. All I know is that it went off again and she dropped. And then they say, how was the gun then? And then Russell said the gun was in her hand. And this brings me back to the 911 call when he calls in and like seeking assistance, right? And says that she's been shot. They ask who shot her, and he pauses, clears his throat, and says, well, I don't know. Yeah. So that first night, that first thing is, I don't know. I could have shot her, she could have shot her. And now you're over here saying the gun was in her hand, she did it. It's just, that's one of the biggest problems that I have with all of this. And her family, too. This is obviously the problem that they have. So, you know, that's what their family has been fighting for so long, is that his story changes and the things just do not add up. Next thing that I want to talk about is Nikki and her sister, Christina. So the two children. After all of this happens, the daughter that Russell and Stephanie had together, so Christina stayed with Russell. And Nikki went... So first she was taken with like Stephanie's family, but then went to her father, Craig Daly. Now, this is really sad because when tragedies take place, everyone goes through something different. So different, right? Everyone experiences like trauma and grief and loss so differently. But one thing that happened is that these two sisters who lost their mother that night, they also lost each other. They end up seeing each other at their mother's funeral. And then they go months without seeing each other. And it would be on and off like that, where they would go 10 months without seeing each other, on to like decades without seeing each other. So one of the things that Nikki mentions is that a few days after Stephanie was murdered, Russell had taken Nikki and Christina out for the day. They had gone on a pink Jeep tour, which is something that's pretty known in the Sedona area. You get in this decked out Jeep and it takes you around to see the amazing views and scenery that Sedona is known for. And during this, Nikki said that Russell was pretty much asking her to tell the courts that she wanted to stay with him and keep the family together. So took her out and like was trying to like let her know or tell her like, hey, just go in and say this, go in and say this.
Yeah.
And something that she says, too, is like, this wasn't common for them. This wasn't something that they used to go do these Jeep tours or go out and do these kind of things together. And it was normal. And he was trying to, like, keep that together. This was random. It was rare. It wasn't something that was normal. And he was trying to do that. So after that happened, Nikki had told her family about this. And once that happened, Russell pretty much kept her sister away from her. And that was the start of their separation. They did get to see each other the following year because her sister, the one I was talking about, Wendy, she ended up planning the Disneyland trip that her sister wanted to take the girls on. Don't make that face. So she said that she planned the trip to Disneyland. And Nikki says that looking back on that trip, she could tell that Russell had been brainwashing Christina into believing that their mother had killed herself.
No. That's horrible.
It is horrible. It is absolutely horrible. Over the next 30 years, they would go decades without speaking to each other. They would then try to rekindle or make things right. And then again, there would be a wedge that was created and things would go sour. The last time that Nikki talked with her sister was in July of 2020. And in things I have seen and read, Nikki wishes to reconnect with her. But either way, no matter what, Nikki is not going to stop fighting for her mom, for the justice of her mother.
Yeah.
Talking about Christina, we have to go back to that night. And the fact that on that night, she says, Poppy killed Mommy. So, from Russell's accounts, he says that after that final shot, when Stephanie dropped, he turns around and that Christina was standing there in the hallway looking. That she said right then and there, Daddy killed Mommy. And he said, no, I didn't. Then investigators come and she says it again and again. Poppy killed Mommy. Poppy killed Mommy. Then in an interview that they had with her at the police department, like an actual interview, she says it in that interview. And they ask her questions about it. Like, did you see him pull the trigger? And other questions about what she saw or like specifics.
To a 3-year-old?
She was only 3 years old. It is heartbreaking. Heather's crying. You think about your children. You think about your babies in these moments of like knowing that, first of all, he said she was standing there and she says this. She saw stuff. That is something that has stuck with her. And you can tell this stuck with her forever, obviously, you know? And so to know that they're in there asking, because they also want to find the answers and figure things out. And she has said it. So they're trying to get that out. But they're asking her stuff like, you know, how many shots did you hear? Another thing that came forward years later. So one of the times that Nikki and her sister came back into contact, she had actually met Russell's then wife. He had remarried after Stephanie's death. And well, Russell and this woman, they didn't stay together very long. They got divorced. And Nikki said that this woman told her that when they were together, Russell confessed to her about shooting Stephanie. Hello. Yet when Nikki took this into the police, they didn't do a damn thing about it.
The police didn't do anything about it.
No. Nothing about it.
And why?
I wish I had that answer, because how often do we see people come forward after relationships to give details? But then we see the investigators going out of their way to find these women and talk to them, or partners or whoever.
Yeah.
To see if they'll talk.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that.
What the fuck?
They didn't do that. I don't know the specifics if this woman went to them on her own. I didn't see that, so I don't know if she did.
Yeah.
But the fact that she told Nikki this and Nikki brought that forward, how are they not there talking to her?
That's like, that should be like, that's like their due diligence. They need to follow up on this.
That's the bare minimum, is to do your job, guys. Yeah. I mean, how do you not? Yeah, that, it pissed me off when I heard that. It sickens me.
We sit there and we implore people to say something, to do something. But if someone in a vulnerable state and like it means nothing if when you tell someone people don't follow up on it. Like if you're like your job is to follow up on leads. Like what are you doing? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. They weren't doing much.
Clearly.
Now I'm going to take you back in time once again, to talk about some of the phone calls that were made that night leading into that morning. So first, Stephanie talked with her sister Wendy for a little while on the phone. And in this conversation, Wendy says that Stephanie seemed upset or unhappy, and that this was actually like something that was pretty common at this time in Stephanie's life, because despite like their many years of being happy and, you know, having a good relationship, at this time, she was unhappy in their marriage and she was wanting out. Mm-hmm. And so her sister Wendy, she could tell that during this time, she wasn't in the best spirits. The second phone call was the one that I talked to you about earlier briefly, that she had a almost 2-hour long conversation with her ex, Craig, Nikki's dad. Mm-hmm. And this is something very important and is actually brought up a lot because it's brought up every single time that Russell talks about that night. So although other things may be jumbled or have discrepancies,
he's
like
very clear on the fact that she
Yes.
had this conversation with her ex. Okay,
this very, very long conversation, 2 to 2.5 hours. I think it was like 107 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was a long phone call, but this never changes or is left out of him talking about that night, right? So Craig comes forward, they talk to him and they talk about the conversation that they had. And he told them that, first of all, they talked pretty often, right? They co-parented for their daughter, Nikki. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't rare for them to talk. But Craig said that in this conversation that it came up that he was actually no longer in a relationship with the woman that he was previously seeing, and that he pretty much told Stephanie that she should come out there with the girls and stay with him. Like, take the girls and go stay with him to leave Russell. Mm-hmm. Third phone call. Again with her sister. But now Stephanie seemed in much better spirits. Like a switch. And maybe this is just how she remembered it. I don't know. But maybe it's because Stephanie had just had this conversation and possibly saw a way out.
Right.
Either way, her sister said that in this phone call, she was much happier than the one before. These phone calls are important because when you think about people who end up taking their own life, mm-hmm. Do I even want to get into this? It's just, I guess the thought that crosses my mind is you don't see ways out. You don't see other options. You don't see something good or positive, mm-hmm. right? And everyone's different, but like for it to get better, that's one of the things that I know her sister Wendy, when she was fighting for her too, because she worked just as hard as Nikki, like trying to find answers, is like, dude, like, first of all, my sister would never, like her family always says, like, she would have never done that. And like she had something to look forward to. So why?
Right.
Why?
Right.
Fourth phone call. This one actually took place from Russell's phone and was for about 1 minute. And it was to his father. This phone call took place at 1:36 a.m. Remember, the 911 phone call took place at 1:40. We don't know what happened on that phone call or what the conversation was. But in reports, they say that the fight between Stephanie and Russell began at around 1:15 a.m. So if all of this happened, why would Russell place a phone call to someone else before calling 911?
Yeah, that's suspicious as fuck.
Right? Yeah, I don't understand that. But I don't understand the majority of this.
Yeah.
Next, we're going to talk about the autopsy and the medical examiner report. The bullet taking Stephanie's life went through the left side of her neck. I'm going to read a passage from this report. Quote, "In checking the victim's body, I observed an entry wound with powder burns along the left side of the victim's neck, and an exit wound was observed on the back of the victim's neck." End quote. So the cause of death was stated as gunshot wound to the neck. Mm-hmm. Manner of death was stated homicide. Mm-hmm. In the autopsy was done, as well as the toxicology report, and the blood alcohol level was 0.17. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they already said they're sitting there drinking wine. Mm-hmm. Her left hand and palm were positive for powder residue. Her right hand and palm were negative for powder residue. Also stated in this that the left part of her neck was negative for powder residue. Okay. I ended up having to reach out to Nikki to try to get more information on this, and she explains it better than I could. So here is what she says. This is a quote from her. Evidence states the gun was pressed against the neck, and when the police reenacted this, they proved that she could not have pressed the gun against her neck to create that herself. Evidence that they decided to not look at. End quote.
So they recreate it, but they're like, oh, yeah, well, we're just going to ignore it now.
Yeah. They recreate a couple things that absolutely don't make any sense. This, right, so all of that, this meaning that she had, this is what Nikki told me, that she had her hands up in a defensive manner when the gun went off. And that's why the residue had went onto her left hand from when she was shot or when the shot was fired. Her hands were up, okay? Also, during this investigation, another thing that they, did so good at looking into, yet nothing ever came from it, is that they had someone of Stephanie's build try to recreate this gunshot to herself with the specific gun and showed how difficult it would have been. Not ruled out that it couldn't have been done, okay? Want to make that clear. But how difficult it would have been, especially with her non-dominant hand, being that Stephanie was right-handed. None of it adds up. None of it. I don't know how many of you guys are listening, shoot guns. It's hard for me to shoot a gun with my dominant hand. So just want to point that out.
Well, and the other thing that's a little confusing for me is if you're taking his account, it would make sense for her to have gunshot residue on her hand because she supposedly already shot at him. But what also doesn't make sense about that is you're saying that, first of all, she shot this big-ass gun with her non-dominant hand, and she shot at him. That's what happened, because why wouldn't she have gunpowder residue if she shot the gun on her right hand? So she one-handedly, with her non-dominant hand, shot at him.
Yeah,
and
that's what he's saying.
Yeah, that's what he says.
Well, when he actually, in the reports and in his conversations, he always says that he thought it was her right hand. That he thought, she held up her right hand. It was her right hand. But there's residue
zero gunpowder residue on her right hand.
Exactly.
So he just has no, none of this is right.
No.
You can't. Okay.
Yeah. So, and something else that